And the thing that is not well appreciated about something about cars and any kind of new technology is how hard it is to do the manufacturing. It is vastly harder to do the manufacturing by a factor of 100.
I think I've made several hiring decisions in the past where I valued intellect over heart, and I think that was a mistake. And so I've tried to adjust accordingly.
Well, no, I mean, I actually really take the position that I'm always to some degree wrong, and the aspiration is to be less wrong. We're always to some degree wrong. It doesn't matter who you are. And I think trying to minimize the wrong-headedness over time is that, I believe in that philosophy. Definitely want to listen to any positive and negative feedback that you get, which is not to say that you believe it, but you need to look at it, at any positive and negative feedback, and say maybe it's correct, maybe it's not, weigh it up, and just sort of carefully reflect on all the information you receive.
Per se, although I try to get feedback from as many people as possible, so I have like friends, and I ask them to what they think of this, that, and the other thing, and as mentioned, Larry Page is a good friend of mine. Value his advice a lot, and I have many other good friends, and so I think it's good to solicit feedback, and particularly negative feedback, actually, because obviously people don't love the idea of giving you negative feedback. But if something's important enough, then you do it even though the risk of failure is high. And so I think my advice, if somebody wants to start a company, is they should bear in mind that the most likely outcome is that it's not going to work, and they should reconcile themselves to that strong possibility. It happens a lot in the shower. I don't know what it is about showers, or yeah, exactly. And then there are some times, like late at night, if I've been thinking about something, then I can't sleep, and I'll be up for several hours, thinking about, sort of pacing around the house and thinking about things. And well, I mean, if you think about a company is a group of people that are organized to create a product or service. That's what a company is. So in order to create such a thing, you have to convince others to join you in your effort, and so they have to be convinced that it's a sensible thing, that that there's at least some reasonable chance of success, and if there is success, that the reward will be commensurate with the effort involved, so I think that's getting people to believe in what you're doing and in you is important. So in the beginning, there will be few people who believe in you or in what you're doing, but then over time, as you make progress, the evidence will build, and more people will believe in what you're doing. So I think it's a good idea when creating a company to have a demonstration, or if it's a product, to have like a good mock-up, or if it's software, to have good demoware, or to be able to sketch something so that people can really envision what it's about.
How should someone figure out how they can be most useful?
Whatever this thing is that you're trying to create, what would be the utility delta compared to the current state of the art times how many people it would affect? So that's why I think. Well, first of all, I'd say I actually think I feel fear quite strongly. So it's not as though I just have the absence of fear. I feel it quite strongly. But there are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear. Patience is definitely not one of my virtues, I'd say. But I'm impatient, but I'm also somewhat of a perfectionist about all the details, both the visible things and the things that are hard to see. So I think probably my desire to be a perfectionist with respect to the product is greater than my impatience. So I would rather have a great, essentially I will not ship a bad product. I refuse to ship a bad product. My time is mostly split, well, it's split between SpaceX and Tesla, and of course I try to spend it's a part of every week at OpenAI. So I spend basically half a day at OpenAI most weeks, and then I have some OpenAI stuff that happens during the week. But other than that, it's really
And what do you do
SpaceX
when
and
you're at
Tesla.
SpaceX or Tesla? Like, what does your time look like there?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think a lot of people think I must spend a lot of time with media or on businessy things, but actually almost all my time, like 80% of it is spent on engineering and design. So it's developing next generation product. That's 80% of it.
And also, like I try to sort of figure out what's the right amount of sleep, because I found I could drop below a certain threshold of sleep, and although I'd be awake more hours and I could sustain it, I would get less done because my mental acuity would be affected. So I found generally the right number for me is around 6 to 6.5 hours on average per night. Having a smartphone is incredibly helpful because that means you can do email during interstitial periods, like if you're in a car, you're walking in the bathroom, everywhere. You can do email practically when you're awake. And so that's really helpful to have email for SpaceX and Tesla integrated on my phone.
And then, just in general, critical thinking is good. Examining whether you have the correct axioms, are the most applicable axioms, does the logic necessarily connect, and then what are the range of probable outcomes? Outcomes are usually not deterministic; they're a range. The physics training is a very good training where it's a good framework for reasoning, where you're trained to think about first principles and reason from there. And that means boiling things down to the most fundamental truths and then connecting those truths in a way to try to understand how reality is. Because physics has this problem where they're trying to figure out things that are totally counterintuitive. Yeah. And so they had to have a framework for getting there. Like quantum mechanics is incredibly counterintuitive, but it's true. And so so physics developed a framework for figuring out things that aren't obvious. And that's why. But in general, I do think it's worth thinking about like whether what you're doing is going to result in disruptive change or not. If it's just incremental, it's unlikely to be something major. It's got to be something that's substantially better than what's gone on before.
Generally a fan of like minimal government interference in the economy. Like the government should be kind of like the referee, but not the player. And there shouldn't be too many referees. But there is an exception, which is when there's an unpriced externality, such as the CO2 capacity of the oceans and atmosphere. So when you have an unpriced externality, then the normal market mechanisms do not work, and then it's government's role to intervene in a way that's sensible.
Well, I think that the way that we currently do education is wrong, and when you see something like the Khan Academy and so forth, I think that's probably going in the right direction. I mean, generally you want education to be like as close to a video game as possible, like a good video game. Like, you do not need to tell your kid to play video games. They will play video games on autopilot all day. So if you can make it interactive and engaging, then you can make education far more compelling and far easier to do. And it shouldn't be that you've got like these grades where people move in lockstep. And so everyone goes through, goes like normally, we'll go through English, math, science and so forth from like 5th grade to 6th grade to 7th grade, like it's an assembly line. But people are not objects on an assembly line. That's a ridiculous notion. People learn and are interested in different things at different paces. So you really want to disconnect the whole grade level thing from the subjects. Allow people to progress at the fastest pace that they can or are interested in each subject.
that we achieve democratization of AI technology, meaning that no one company or small set of individuals has control over advanced AI technology. I think that's very dangerous. It could also get stolen by somebody bad, like some evil dictator or country could send their intelligence agency to go steal it and gain control. It just becomes a very unstable situation, I think, if you've got any incredibly powerful AI. You just don't know who's going to control that. So it's not as though I think that the risk is that the AI would develop a will of its own right off the bat. I think it's more that's the concern is that someone may use it in a way that is bad, and even if they weren't going to use it in a way that's bad, that somebody could take it from them and use it in a way that's bad. That I think is quite a big danger. So I think we must have democratization of AI technology and make it widely available, and that's the reason that obviously Yumi and the rest of the team created OpenAI, was to help with the help spread out AI technology so it doesn't get concentrated in the hands of a few.
The way in which a regulation is put in place is slow and linear,
Right.
and we are facing an exponential threat. And if you have a linear response to an exponential threat, it's quite likely the exponential threat will win. I keep sounding the alarm bell, but until people see like robots going down the street killing people, like they don't know how to react, because it seems so ethereal. I think we should be really concerned about AI, and I think we should. AI is a rare case where I think we need to be proactive in regulation instead of reactive, because I think by the time we are reactive in AI regulation, it's too late. And I'm against overregulation for sure, but man, I think we better get on that with AI pronto. So there'll certainly be a lot of job disruption, because what's going to happen is robots will be able to do everything better than us. I'm including, all of us, Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what to do about this. And you can see more and more coming out, I think, the robotics. You can see robots that can learn to walk from nothing, within hours, like way faster than any biological being. But the thing that's most dangerous is, and it's the hardest to kind of wrap, kind of get your arms around because it's not a physical thing, is kind of a deep intelligence in the network. You say, well, what harm could a deep intelligence in the network do? So, well, it could start a war by doing fake news and spoofing email accounts and fake press releases, and just by manipulating information. The pen is mightier than the sword.
Which is that if you extrapolate into the future and say, well, how good, let's say, will video games be in 100 or 200 or 1,000 years from now? If there's continued improvement, and you're in a full-body haptic suit with a sort of surround vision, and it becomes, beyond a certain resolution, indistinguishable from reality. And there are likely to be millions, maybe billions of such simulations. So then, what are the odds that we're actually in base reality? Isn't it 1 in billions?
Well, there actually does seem to be, oddly enough, some breakthrough on the whole warp drive thing, because you can't exceed the speed of light, but technically it is possible, theoretically possible, to warp space itself, so that even in your local space-time continuum, you're not traveling faster than the speed of light, but you're warping space such that space is moving.
It would be something that would be, say, twice as fast as a plane, at least in terms of total transit time, maybe a little faster. It would be immune to weather, incapable of crashing, pretty much, unless there's like a terrorist attack.
the ticket price would be like, let's say, half that of a plane. So it would be better in every way. I can't tell you how important that contracting structure is. That is night and day. There's way too much in government which is where it's a sole source cost plus contract. That just, again, economics 101, whatever you incent, that will happen. And people shouldn't be surprised. It's like, oh, you just, said, okay, if that company manages to find some excuse to double the cost of the contract, they're going to get double the profit because they're getting a percentage. So they can do exactly that.
But I was actually at one point of a school of thought that it's best to give away kind of like 99% or more of one's assets, kind of like the Buffett school of thought. And I'm still mostly inclined in that direction, but after seeing what happened with Ford and GM and Chrysler, where GM and Chrysler went bankrupt, but Ford did not, and Ford seemed to make better long-term choices than the other two companies, and that's in part because of the influence of the Ford family. And I thought, well, okay, there may be some merit in having some longer-term family ownership, at least a portion of it, so it acts as a positive influence.
Each subject.
There are many more ways to fail than to succeed. So you have to explore. Particularly like for a rocket, there's like 1,000 ways a thing can fail, and like one way it can work. So you could have a lot of rocket failures to explore all the ways in which it could fail. But I do think that one great thing about Silicon Valley is that failure is not a big stigma. So it's like if you try hard and it doesn't work out, that's okay. Like you can learn from that and do another company, and it's not a big deal.
I don't think we spend a lot of time sort of consciously on creating a particular culture, but I think the culture comes from the actions and the way that I guess you interact with people and conduct meetings. I think now that the companies are fairly big, Tesla's about 12,000 people, SpaceX is about just over 4,000 people. I've given some thought that to actually writing something up, because the amount of direct interaction I have with people is a lot more limited. I do skip level meetings, so it's like I meet with my report and their direct reports. So it's got to be something that people that's quite actionable. Like, okay, these are rules that are different from how we might otherwise do things. Like the rules need to particularly capture counterintuitive things. If something's like fairly obvious, or then I guess people will probably do that. But the counterintuitive stuff is less obvious. And one thing we have at the companies is we try to minimize the size of meetings. I think it's actually important to minimize the size of meetings. Somebody should, unless somebody's getting enormous value from the information they're receiving, or they're contributing to the meeting itself, they should not be there. And we also have a rule that if somebody's in a meeting and finds that this meeting is not helping them in a meaningful way, and they are not contributing to the meeting, they should just leave.
Your culture, would that be rude to do that? Or?
No, that's expected.
That's
rude
expected.
to stay. I'm not actually a fan of disruption for its own sake. I think that if there's a need for something to be disrupted, and it's important to the future of the world, then sure, then we should disrupt it. But I don't think we should just disrupt things unless that disruption is going to result in something fundamentally better for for society. A lot of people think I'm a fan of disruption, but I'm not really a fan of disruption. I'm just a fan of things being better. The fundamental issue with incentives or subsidies when it comes to renewable power is that we've been unwilling as a country to establish a tax on carbon. If you could establish a tax on carbon, then no incentives or subsidies would be necessary because the market system would work as it should. I'm a big believer in the market system. The market system is just basically the collective will of the people. That's all. So if you can as long as there's not something that's causing an error in the pricing system, as there is because of the unpriced externality, which is the CO2 capacity of the oceans and atmosphere, the market system works very well.
I mean, I think, wishful thinking for sure is a source of many problems in many walks of life. Business or personal wishful thinking causes a lot of trouble. You really have to ask, whether something is true or not. Does it make sense? And if it ever feels like too easy, it probably is.
When you're building something new, there's going to be mistakes. And it's important to recognize those mistakes, acknowledge them, and take corrective action. And the success of a company is very much more about how quick are you to fix the mistakes, not will you make mistakes.
Or admit the mistakes.
Absolutely. And if you see the difference between a startup that is successful and one that is not, and it's because the successful one, they both made mistakes, but the successful one recognized the mistakes, fixed them very quickly, and the unsuccessful one tries to deny that the mistakes exist.
So you are very famous in saying that failure is actually an option, and if you're not failing, that means you're not innovative enough.
Yeah, it's not like I like failure. I mean, who likes failure is terrible. But if you only do things that are certain to succeed, then you're only going to be doing very obvious things.
Sure. I mean, if you're going to try something innovative, then you're in unexplored territories, so the odds that something will go wrong are pretty high. It's only if you try to do something that is already well understood that there's little chance of failure, but then it will not be interesting or innovative. For sure, uncharted territory will result in failures necessarily. Otherwise, you're not trying hard enough.
It's not. There's no need even to have a college degree at all, or even high school. If somebody graduated from a great university, that may be an indication that they will be capable of great things, but it's not necessarily the case. If you look at, say, people like Bill Gates or Larry Ellison, Steve Jobs, these guys didn't graduate from college. But if you had a chance to hire them, of course, that would be a good idea. So, just looking just for evidence of exceptional ability. And if there's a track record of exceptional achievement, then it's likely that will continue into the future. How I describe myself? I seem to have a high innate drive, and that's been true even since I was a little kid. I really had a very strong drive. Did all sorts of risky things when I was a kid that why did I do those things? They're crazy. I care a lot about the truth of things and trying to understand the truth of things. I think that's important. But the ability to attract and motivate great people is critical to the success of a company, because a company is it's a group of people that are assembled to create a product or service. That's the purpose of a company. People sometimes forget this elementary truth, and so if you're able to get great people to join the company and work together towards a common goal, and you sort of have a relentless sense of perfection about that goal, then you will end up with a great product. I wouldn't say I'm fearless. In fact, I think I feel fear quite strongly. But if what we're doing is what I'm doing is I think is important enough, then I just override the fear. So, but it's not as though I feel it like more strongly than I would like.
And in which areas would you never go full risk if you still are fearful?
Well, it really depends on the stakes. If the stakes are high, if it's really important, then I will overcome the fear and just do it anyway. But essentially, I just drive overrides fear, but I feel the fear. It's kind of annoying. I wish I felt it less. My priority right now is to try to add some more management bench strength to Tesla in particular, so that I can take a vacation. In the last 12 years, I've only tried to take a week off twice. The first time I took a week off, the Orbital Sciences rocket exploded and Richard Branson's rocket exploded in that same week. Second time I took a week off, my rocket exploded. The lesson here is don't take a week off.
Inevitably, both companies cannot expect more than half your time at most. It sort of naturally forces a delegation upon you and an expectation they have to rise up for partial awareness at best, right? Yeah. And I just wonder if that helps drive prioritization and really focusing on what's important a bit more than you otherwise might have to.
It probably does. Yeah, I think I probably do. Yeah, I mean, because I have to triage the things that I do at each company, and constantly think about what is the most useful thing that I could do. But even with that, it still actually does take an enormous amount of time. And for a while there, I was just doing constant 100-hour weeks, and that's definitely wearing. And now I'm kind of in the 80 to 90, which is more manageable. But that if you divide that by 2, it's only like maybe 45 hours per company, which is not much when there's a lot of things going on.
You're like a slacker. I mean,
yeah.
But I find it fascinating. I was at a lunch at a Google event, and out of the blue, with no expectation this would be a topic, Larry Page turned to me, knowing a little bit about our connection, said, how much money do I have? And he mentioned a number. I thought that was cute, that he was trying to recall that. He goes, if I were to get hit by a bus today, I should leave all of it to Elon Musk.
Really?
Yeah.
He said that?
Yeah. And so I'm like, paper or pen? Can we please get this down on? Yes. So he likes zingers.
I know that actually. He's a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm. So context is important.
I met Larry before he got venture funding.
Oh, really?
So yeah. So that's like 97
back in the garage
or something.
Days? Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, he's a remarkable guy. Obviously, also an underachiever, and has a company that wants to do good in the world, right? Yeah. And I think he looks at you with a bit of envy, because what he then proceeded to say was, I could give my money to a nonprofit, and a lot less would get done than a corporation that's pursuing things that are directly aligned with things I care about, like getting off of oil and colonizing other planets. He believes in those missions and thinks that a corporation, if endowed with the right to do that as its business purpose, is the best vehicle out there, and wishes he could do more of that in his own life. It raises the question of a purpose-driven business. So you've heard already that Tesla is not just trying to make money. That is not the priority. In fact, if you read the most recent shareholder letter, it says profits are not.
In fact, I started off the shareholder letter saying the profits are not our primary goal, and then I got a little bit of some of the board members who questioned that statement.
Did you have a moment where, is this something this idea of getting rid of your material possessions, is something that built up over time? Or did you have a moment of realization where you realized that?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for a while. Part of it is I have a bunch of houses, but I don't spend a lot of time in most of them, and that doesn't seem like a good use of assets. Like somebody could probably be enjoying those houses and get better use of them than me. So
don't you have Gene Wilder's house?
I do.
That's amazing.
It's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, it's exactly what you'd expect.
Did you request that the buyer not fuck it up?
Yeah, that's a requirement.
A requirement. That's a good requirement.
Yeah.
In that case, in that house.
Yeah, it'll probably sell for less, but still, I don't care.
He's a legend.
Yeah,
you'd awesome. Want his soul. Yeah. You'd want his essence.
Yeah,
in the building.
It's there. That's a real quirky house. Yeah.
What makes you say it's there? Like, what do you get out of it?
I mean, all the cabinets are like handmade, and they're like odd shapes, and there's like doors to nowhere and strange like corridors and tunnels and
really
odd paintings on the wall, and yeah.
Did you ever live in it?
It's very quirky. I did live in it briefly, yeah.
But why do you buy houses? Like, if you own all these houses, do you just get bored and go, I think I'd like to have that?
Well, I, had one house, and then the Gene Wilder house right across the road from me, from my main house, and it was gonna get sold and then torn down and turned into be a big construction zone for 3 years, and I was like, well, I think I'll buy it and preserve the spirit of Gene Wilder and not have a giant construction zone. And then I started having like some privacy issues where like people would, like lots of people just like come to my house and, you know, start climbing over the walls and stuff. So I'm like, man. So then I started like bought a house, some of the houses around my house. And then I thought at one point, well, you know, it'd be cool to build a house. So then I acquired some properties at the top of Samara Road, and which has got a great view. And it's like, okay, well, some bunch of sort of small older houses, they're going to get torn down anyway. And I was like, well, you know, if I collect these like little houses, then I can build something, you know, I don't know, artistic, like a, you know, dream house type of thing.
What's a dream house for Elon Musk? Like some Tony Stark type shit?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you got to have the dome that opens up with the stealth helicopter and that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah,
for sure.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, fuck yeah. But then I was like, man, does it really make sense for me to spend time designing and building a house? And I'd be real, you know, get like OCD on the little details and the design, or should I be allocating that time to getting us to Mars? I should probably do the latter. So, but I think like the real test of any given startup is how well does it respond to adversity and adapt and just figure it out. You know, so like most things are just, when they start out, they don't make a lot of sense. But then as long as you adapt quickly, then you can make the company work.
It's dependent upon me giving an accurate self-analysis. It's difficult to do self-analysis, you know. You're sort of too close to yourself by definition. But I think, well, people do not think critically enough. I mean, critical thinking is a skill in short supply, where people take too many things they assume too many things to be true without sufficient basis in that belief. So it's very important that people closely analyze what is supposed to be true and try to build up. Try to say, let's analyze things from first principles, not by analogy or not by convention. If you assume things are true by convention, which is actually what most people do, then it's difficult to gain insight into how things can be bettered. So, you know, in any argument or any sort of train of thinking, you want to make sure that the underlying premises are valid and applicable, and then in reaching a conclusion, that the conclusion you're reaching is necessarily driven by the underlying premises and the interconnection between those premises. That may seem like a really simple thing to say, but most people don't do that.
I suppose honestly that it tends to be gut feel more than anything else. So when I interview somebody, my interview question is always the same. It's
what do you ask?
I said, tell me the story of your life. And the decisions that you made along the way and why you made them. And then, and also tell me about some of the most difficult problems you worked on and how you solved them. And that question, I think, is very important, because the people that really solved the problem, they know exactly how they solved it. They know the little details. And the people that pretended to solve the problem, they can maybe go one level and then they get stuck.
So there is something romantic about traditional books, of course. But I find, since I'm traveling so much that I often find I'm reading the books on my iPhone, which may sound like, wow, this is really tiny, but it's always with you.
Pass me my iPhone. Pass me. I mean, to book on. You're not reading the Howard Hughes book on your iPhone.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
You're reading a Howard Hughes book on something the size of this.
Yes.
it's small, but it works. More people should study engineering and science, and actually I'd say particularly engineering, because engineering is I think the closest thing to magic that exists in the real world. Engineering is creating some new device that never existed before, and that can do things today that would be considered magic. GPA is just one element, actually puts slightly higher weighting on having won some sort of competition.
So someone told me before this interview that you work in a cubicle. Is that
Well, I have a
true?
desk, yeah.
Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I think it's important to maximize communication. You know, I'm much more sort of the Spartan school of thought. So I care about effective execution at the company, and the more you insulate yourself from information or feedback in the company, the worse decisions you make.
What is your favorite song from the movie Three Amigos?
Well, we'd only do it if you guys are willing to sing along.
Okay. All right.
So Jonah actually is the dancer of the three.
Behind the camera.
Three of us we've been playing and singing and dancing this song since we were kids, and so we're going to do that on stage. And if you guys can sing along, we'll do the first verse, and then you guys can sing along on the second verse.
Okay.
This is going to be real bad.
We promised that it would be terrible.
Yeah, exactly. I said terrible. It's going to be terrible.
I'm nixing the dancing thing.
Oh, come on.
Come with me where moonbirds hit the sky. And then you'll walk with me along the by on by. Okay, all together now.
My little buttercup.
My little buttercup
has the sweetest smile. My little buttercup, why do you stay a while? Won't you stay a while?
Moonbeams meet the sky, and you and I will walk the by on by.
Well, this is really winning.
Elon was going through his sad period. I was so sad. I felt like I had a hole in my heart, and there's nothing you can do. You just hurt so much, and I just didn't see him getting out of it. He was just so sad. And then the next thing I get this call saying, "Ma, you can't believe it. I've met a wonderful woman."
Business and personal life was just hell at that period.
It was definitely a very difficult period. My ex-wife and I just filed for divorce, and I happened to be in London, and my friend Bill had dragged me out to a club, and then Tallulah had a friend of hers had dragged her to the same club.
Idea for an electric jet. He wants to work on nuclear fusion. You know, he wants to remake the highways in Los Angeles. So many reasons.
As am I. Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because I'm a visionary too. No, the past 2 years have been quite a ride, you know, and there've been some decisions that at the time I've, you know, been quaking in my boots over, you know, the things he's been doing. I feel privileged to be able to see them sort of so up close and witness it all.
At 38, Elon's running SpaceX and Tesla. He's got 5 boys, he's going through a very public divorce, and he's got a new fiancée.
There are a lot of resource conflicts when you have 5 kids. At any given point, somebody's taking somebody's toy.
What's this game?
Did you just take that from your brother?
Yeah, but I want to see what game it is.
Damn it. So this is what I'm talking about. Somebody took somebody's toy. Statistically speaking, one out of the 5 has a good chance of being unhappy at any given point.
I don't know how he handles the stress. I mean, if I was him, I'd have died of a heart attack. You would not wish that kind of pain on your worst enemy. Elon proposed really quickly. the idea of being swept off your feet is appealing, and I'd probably have said yes to anyone that seemed half sensible if they proposed after 10 days, just because it's kind of an interesting thing to do.
Do that thing, Dad.
You know, obviously moved straight into the house with the children, and it became a very real thing immediately. My parents were traumatized by this whole experience. Although there's been so many times that, right, I'm getting on a plane to England and I'm never going to see you again.
Really?
No. No, not really.